People do strange things with their money, things that look irrational, things that seem reckless or even foolish. But here's the truth no one talks about. No one is crazy. What if everything you believed about money was shaped before you even knew it? Nobody talks about this, but it explains everything. Let me tell you something about money that no financial advisor will ever say. Every single financial decision a person makes, every investment, every risk, every refusal to invest, makes perfect sense. Not to you, maybe, but to them, completely logical. Why? Because money decisions are never just about money. They are about memory. Think about this. Two people sit across from each other, both intelligent, both educated. One says, "Put everything in the stock market. Long term, it always wins." The other says, "Never touch the stock market. It will destroy you." Who is right? Both of them. Not because the data agrees with both, but because their lives taught them different lessons. A deep look at 50 years of consumer financial data reveals something extraordinary. The way people invest throughout their entire lives is not shaped by logic. It is shaped by the era they grew up in, especially their early adult years. The economy you experienced at age 22 will quietly follow you for decades. The person who grew up poor thinks about financial risk in ways that a child of a wealthy family simply cannot imagine. They are not thinking differently because one is smarter. They are thinking differently because one watched their family struggle, and the other never had to. One saw what happens when things collapse. The other only read about it. Consider this. The person who came of age during high inflation, who watched prices double, savings erode, and futures crumble, carries that fear in their bones. The person who grew up when prices were stable, they cannot feel that fear. Not really. They can understand it as a concept, but they have never felt it in their stomach at 2 a.m. There is a famous story about John F. Kennedy. During a presidential campaign, a reporter asked him what he remembered about the Great Depression. He paused, and he said something honest. His family had enormous wealth during that period. Their fortune actually grew. The only thing he personally witnessed was his father hiring a few extra workers, simply to help them survive. He said he did not truly learn about the Depression until he studied it at university. Think about what that means. One of the most powerful men in the world. Brilliant, informed, and yet, he experienced an event that broke an entire generation and felt almost none of its weight. That is not his fault. That is just life. You can read every book about financial collapse. You can study every chart. You can memorize every statistic about market crashes. But until you have personally watched your savings disappear, until you have looked your children in the eyes and wondered if you made a terrible mistake, you do not truly know. Not the way they know. Your personal experience with money is maybe a fraction of a percent of all financial history, but it is 90% of how you think the world works. That gap between real history and lived experience explains almost every financial disagreement you have ever had with your partner, with your parents, with your friends. The investor who survived the Great Depression is not irrational for avoiding stocks. The tech worker riding a bull market is not naive for being optimistic. The immigrant who keeps cash under a mattress is not foolish. Each of them is making a perfectly reasonable decision, based on the world they personally lived through. Think about the Australian investor, a country that went 30 years without a single recession. Their entire financial identity was built on stability. No American investor has ever experienced that, and no Australian investor has truly felt what repeated economic shocks do to a nation's psychology. Different worlds, different lessons, different money decisions. Here is what this all means for you. When you look at someone else's financial choices and think, "That makes no sense," stop, because it makes complete sense to them. They are not operating from your spreadsheet. They are operating from their story. And so are you. The most dangerous financial mistake you can make is not a bad investment. It is believing that your financial worldview is the only rational one. Every generation, every background, every lived experience creates a different but equally valid lens. Understanding that is not just wisdom. It is the beginning of real financial intelligence. So the next time someone calls your financial decisions crazy, remember, they are not seeing what you saw. They did not live what you lived. No one is crazy. Everyone is just shaped by a different world. If this video made you see money differently, hit that like button right now. It tells me you want more of this. Subscribe for updates, because every week we go deeper into self-help, psychology, business, and finance. Share this with one person in your life who needs to hear this today. You might change how they see themselves. And in the comments below, tell me one money belief you grew up with. Was it fear? Was it confidence? Was it silence? I read every single one. See you in the next video.